Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're taking a pretty chaotic ancient myth and decoding it into what is actually a profoundly practical psychological framework. If you've ever found yourself wondering how the human mind truly processes logic when it's caught in an absolute storm of emotions, you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to be unpacking the divine alchemy of intellect. Okay, let's dive right into this. What can a scandalous cosmic myth actually teach us about human intelligence? Forget your standard agenda today, because we're jumping straight into a centuries-old mystery that cuts right to the absolute core of how you and I think. Section 1. The Cosmic Scandal, the Chaotic Birth of Mercury. So in Vedic cosmology, Mercury, which is known as Bud, represents the absolute pinnacle of logical intellect. But ironically enough, this perfect cold logic stems from some really unstable origins. It goes a little something like this in the ancient Puranic mythology. Jupiter's wife Tara takes a trip to the moon's realm, Chandraloka, for a vital ritual. But instead of doing what she was supposed to do, she and the moon end up falling into this trap of raw desire and intense intimacy, completely throwing their cosmic duties out the window. Eventually, Tara does return to her husband Jupiter, but, well, she comes back pregnant. You can imagine the betrayal, right? Confused and deeply hurt, Jupiter demands to know, whose child is this? Tara is way too ashamed to even give an answer, but Jupiter, using his divine omniscience, figures out the truth anyway. And he is so enraged by this illicit affair that he curses the unborn child to be born neuter, as an androgynous being. And boom, that is how Mercury is born. Now, because of these super tumultuous and illegitimate origins, Mercury considers his biological father, the moon, to be his bitter enemy. Hang on to that dramatic family hatred for a second, because it's literally the foundation for our entire psychological decode today. Section 2, Emotion versus Intellect, Decoding the Psychological Reality. So let's strip away the literal mythology for a second to reveal this brilliant underlying psychological reality that governs how we operate every single day. In this framework, the moon, or Chandra, represents Manos, and that is the emotional mind. It's our feelings, our instincts, our impulses. But the really key thing to understand here is that it operates entirely on subjective past memories. It fluctuates, it reacts, and it is just constantly feeling. But on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, we have Mercury, or Buddhi, representing the cold, calculating, objective intellect. Unlike the emotional moon, Mercury operates 100% in the present moment. It's totally focused on analyzing data, looking at the hard facts, and seeking absolute neutrality. Now, what's really interesting about pitting these two forces against each other is that it answers our core question, right? Why does Mercury hate the moon? Well, it's pretty simple. Emotions destroy logic. When you're operating purely from that emotional mind, from the subjective past, you get totally trapped by old biases and past hurts. I mean, think about it. Your intellect simply cannot function when it's being drowned out by sensitive feelings or mood swings. If you want to see the actual truth of any given situation, your mind has to completely step out of the emotional trap of Chandra, the moon. It absolutely requires cold, neutral detachment to work properly. All right, Section 3, the adaptable chameleon, the superpower of being neuter. Remember Jupiter's ancient curse from earlier? The one declaring Mercury would be neuter? Well, we are going to reframe that supposed punishment into the ultimate psychological advantage. Because Mercury was cursed to be neuter, it actually possesses no fixed gender or rigid bias. It has literally zero personal ego. So translated to human psychology, this means true intelligence has to be completely neutral and adaptable. It acts like a cognitive chameleon, just perfectly morphing to fit whatever data, problem, or situation is sitting right in front of it. Section 4, the planetary battlefield. Mercury's interactions. So, how does all this actually play out in the real world? Well, check out this matrix of Mercury's interactions. Because Mercury is this highly adaptable, neutral force, its relationship with other planetary archetypes dictates exactly how our intelligence manifests. Mars represents raw force, which can really disrupt logic. Jupiter represents charity, which honestly can ruin a business if it's left unchecked. The Sun is ego, which blinds our learning. And Saturn and Venus, they represent comfort, which just breeds complacency. Each of these planets creates a very specific trap for our intellect. And this brilliantly illustrates what happens when Mercury faces Mars. Mars is just pure, brute physical power and survival instinct.
Naturally, Mercury hates this because hot-headed impulses completely disrupt clean, logical processing. But believe it or not, this friction is highly productive. When Mercury successfully tames the wildfires of Mars, all that raw aggression is actually transmuted into incredibly sharp, targeted, and highly disciplined action.
Next up, we've got Mercury versus Jupiter. Now, Jupiter represents higher wisdom and charity, but intelligence needs practical boundaries in the real world. Like, think about it. If you're running a food shop and you just start giving away all your inventory to an able-bodied person simply out of pity, you're going to ruin your business. Unchecked charity breeds poverty, for sure. So the intellect has to remain grounded in practical reality before it can even think about moving on to higher philosophy. Then there's Mercury versus the Sun. The Sun is that kingly authority and, most importantly, the ego. And here is a massive warning for you. When intelligence gets too close to the ego, it goes completely blind. True intellect is hungry. It wants to learn and adapt. But the ego? The ego falsely convinces us that we're already superior, which completely freezes out any space for new knowledge. Let's move to Saturn and Venus and see how this builds, because this one is a bit of a reality check. We all crave comfort and luxury, right? But comfort is actually a massive intellectual trap. Having friends around might make us feel safe and cozy, but they also kind of spoil our minds, breeding this lazy, complacent intellect that just never gets properly challenged. Which brings us to Section 5, the Crucible of Virgo, Why Intellect Exalts in Friction. So if all these other planets compromise our intelligence, whether through emotion, impulse, charity, ego, or comfort, where does our intellect actually thrive? It thrives right here, in Virgo. In the cosmic zodiac, Virgo rules the 6th house. This is the very specific cosmic zone that governs enemies, known as Satru, along with obstacles, debts, and just general daily friction. This highly uncomfortable zone is exactly where every single one of those other planetary compromises gets finally overcome. So the absolutely crucial point here is this. Intelligence does not grow in comfort. It peaks in the face of a challenge. Honestly, you might want to remember that one, because it's easily the most powerful takeaway of our entire explainer today. It makes total sense when you think about it. While our friends make us soft, our enemies literally force us to evolve. They push us way out of our comfort zone, kicking our survival instincts into cold, tactical planning. When placed in Virgo, Mercury beautifully subdues those emotional waves from the moon and tames the aggressive fires of Mars. It simply looks at the raw data of the present moment to solve whatever crisis is at hand, knowing exactly when to take perfectly calculated action. Which leaves us with this final thought to ponder. Will you explore how this Mercury-Virgo energy is manifesting in your own career choices, or maybe even in your personal relationships? Really think about where your intellect is being tested by friction right now, because that is exactly where it is designed to peak. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep seeking that objective truth, and I'll catch you on the